So good morning. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Hawaii State Ethics Commission. Today's January 19th, 2022, and the time is 9:01. Commissioners, please note your presence at this meeting when I call your name. I am Commission Chair Melinda Wood. Vice Chair Fong, are you present?
I'm here, thanks.
Commissioner Galti?
Here.
Commissioner McCarthy?
Here.
Commissioner Tobias?
Present.
Thank you. I'll also note the presence of staff. We have Executive Director Harris. Welcome, sir. Associate Director Yoza, Staff Attorneys Knifer, Chang, and Campbell, Computer Specialist Patrick Louie, and Office Manager Carolyn Choi. For the benefit of any members of the public who may be joining us, if the Commission's video conferencing connection is lost during the meeting, we'll recess the meeting and reconvene after our connection is restored. Please check the Commission's website, www.ethics.hawaii.gov, for information about reconnecting to the meeting. If the meeting is continued to a later date or terminated, information about this will be posted on our website. Are there any members of the public joining us who'd like to identify themselves at this time?
Good morning, Chair Wood, excuse me, and commissioners and staff and executive director. My name is Sandy Ma and I'm with Common Cause Hawaii. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yes. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is item 1, consideration and approval of the minutes of the December 15th, 2021 meeting. Do the commissioners have any comments or corrections to the minutes? If you can even remember that far. But that's why you're giving them in advance.
Unless there are any corrections, Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of the December 15th, 2021 meeting.
Does any member, before we take that motion, does any member of the public wish to testify on the minutes? No? Okay. So we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 15th meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do the roll call vote. Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Commissioner Galti,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobias. Commissioner Tobias.
Oh, we lost your sound.
Oh,
Nope, I was muted. Aye.
okay, thank you. We will move on to agenda item 2, which is the election of officers for 2022.
Excuse me, Chair. I
Yes.
don't believe that you voted on that motion.
Oh, and the chair votes aye. I'm sorry. I was jumping ahead. I
Thank you.
had said, I said aye in my head and not out loud. So the commission elected its current chair and vice chair in July of 2021. And my second term on the commission will end in June of this year. Vice Chair Fong's first term will also end in June. We can elect officers for 2022 at this meeting, or we can decide to keep the current officers in place and defer the election to June of 2022. Do the commissioners have any preference?
Madam Chair, I think that since you have only 6 more months, I like to move that we re-elect Melinda Wood as chair of this commission.
Just as a point, just as a point of clarification, I don't know if you can. Well, I think one of the issues would be is whether or not you're going to re-elect for a year term, or you're just going to push off the election until 6 months from now.
But let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Let me just say that I move that we elect or re-elect Melinda Woods as chair until the end of her tenure this year. Is that okay, Robert?
Well,
I think that
can I add something to what Wes has said?
I think
Please do.
the last chair, we extended it till June so that she could complete her term. I think that would be preferable to me than having an election for two reasons. Number one, we don't want to replace somebody in the midstream. And number two, Wes's term ends on June 3rd. Who knows if he's going to be reappointed? Nobody knows that. So my suggestion would be we simply extend the terms of the current officers until June 30th. And at that time, depending on who's on the commission, have an election for chair and vice chair. Would that satisfy you, Wes?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll withdraw my motion. So there's no second anyway. So my motion dies for lack of second. So
Oh.
is that a motion, Ray? And I'll just second it.
All right, I'll move then that we continue the officers that we have in place until June 30th, when their terms end, and decide later on after that date what to do.
Okay, we kind of jumped ahead here. First of all, we're asking for preferences, or and I'd like to add, if any member of the public wishes to testify before we take any motions. Okay, so it sounds like you want to keep the current officers in place and defer the election to July. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and we have a motion on the table to, is that your motion then, Wes? To keep
It
the
is.
current
No,
officers?
it's Ray's motion. I second
Oh,
it.
okay, sorry.
I withdrew my motion.
Okay,
It doesn't make a difference. There was no second to my motion, so I can withdraw it.
okay, so Ray, your motion is to keep the current officers in place and defer the new elections to June of 2022,
Correct.
or actually July.
July 1st.
Yes, okay. And is there a second on that motion?
I second it.
Okay, great. I just want to make the record clear here.
Chair, just as a point of clarification, that would potentially leave a period where there would be no chair, between the June and the July meeting. And so, just as a point of a clarification, deferring the election till June and then potentially deciding what to do at that point might seem the prudent course. And so that way, if there's not a period of time where there is no chair for the commission,
Okay.
would probably be the preferable.
That
Robert,
makes-
my understanding is that we don't leave until our replacement comes.
That's right.
So
Correct.
we're not gonna have a void. If there's no body that's gonna take Melinda's place or my place, then, we stay on, right?
Absolutely correct. I think that the question would be, though, is if you have an election in July and your successors have been appointed, there is no chair. And if there's any questions that come up, from the perspective of the staff consulting the chair, et cetera, just a little more challenging. Again, we'll make it work.
Yeah.
Wouldn't,
I think that's reasonable.
would the answer to be to hold the elections in the June meeting? In advance. Yeah,
The only issue would be is that if Wes is not appointed, well, and I have to be replaced in any event, we will not know at the June meeting who my replacement is going to be, as far as I
Correct.
know. So I think Robert is, well, Susan, help me out here.
Yes, I don't think
Robert's
it's,
asked a good question here.
I don't think it's a given that any of the commissioners will hold over until their replacement is appointed, because what happened last year is that former chair Shumi's term ended on June 30th, and the commission voted for officers at the July meeting. At that time, Commissioner Shumi's replacement had not been appointed yet. So we only had 4 commissioners at that meeting. And Chair Wood was the vice chair at that time. So the commission voted at the July meeting with only 4 commissioners present to elect then Vice Chair Wood as the chair.
Sorry, just for simplicity, as a recommendation, I would suggest deferring the election to June, and then in June, if you decide to defer it for one more month, you can at that time. But just, it seems prudent, just to make sure we don't have a gap or potentially there is no chair.
Okay, so,
But you're correct. I mean, you're correct. There may not be a successor at, come June 30th, and we don't know what will happen then. But sorry, I don't mean to belabor this issue too much.
It's
I
a very
know,
important thing, Rob.
and you think, so,
Considering, I
this is-
served 3 terms as chair, and I had the
Yes.
I had the distinction of being the longest serving chair, and I was happy to pass it along. So let me just say, I think Melinda's probably feeling the same way. She'd be happy to pass it on, but to whom, we don't know. And pass it on to Wes, who may not be on the commission. That makes it doubly difficult.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had two, well, we must have had this situation before. So Ray, your motion is to defer the election of officers to June?
Well, I'm not sure anymore. To defer it sometime. I think you're going to serve your term until June 30th, so I don't think we can appoint a successor to you until July.
That's true. That's true. Rob, how does that sound to you? That even after the June meeting, my term doesn't expire to the end of June.
It certainly can make it work. We can defer the election till July, and there is a remote chance that we may have a period of time where we don't have a chair, but it could just be the first item on the agenda for the July meeting if that does arise to elect the new officers.
You'd think that those of us who've been on the commission for a while would actually remember what we've done in the past, but I think the transition has always been smooth, and so it's hard to remember whether it happened in June
Yeah.
or July.
Well, the only difference is now Wes may not be on the commission,
Right,
whereas before you were vice chair and you were on the commission. You were not yet finished.
right.
So that's why it's complicated this time around. But
Yeah.
I will take the chance that Wes will be reappointed.
So,
You're also taking a chance that I will apply for reappointment.
That's true. That's true. That's true. All it will take will be a afternoon drink at the Waikiki Yacht Club, I think, to convince you to stay on.
so Susan, if I can get our historical perspective here, could we leave the motion to the new election of officers to June, or should we change it to July?
I'm sorry.
No, what's your preference?
I think you can keep the current state of officers and push back the election until July. And then if staff sees any problems, then we'll come to you in June and we'll put this on the agenda and we can discuss it at that time. How's that?
Okay.
Sounds like a
Rob,
winner.
Rob, does that make you comfortable enough?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that defer the election is the key word, just based on the administrative language. So I appreciate Commissioner Geralti's use of that language.
Who knew that we'd have such a lengthy discussion over this, huh?
Right.
We could be
Okay,
here past noon at the rate we're going.
Yeah,
so the motion is to keep the current officers in place and defer the new election of officers till July of 2022.
Yes.
Do I hear a second on that?
Second that.
Okay, so we'll do the roll call vote. Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Commissioner Gralty,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
aye.
Commissioner Tobias,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So we will defer our elections till July. Okay, so we will move on to agenda item 3, which is the executive director's report. And Rob, you have jumped in with both feet.
Oh, Madam
What's your
Chair,
report?
Madam
Oh.
Chair, can I say something before Robert gives his report? First of all, I think on behalf of the commission, we'd like to welcome Robert to the commission as an executive director, and we wish him well and continuing on the legacy that's been provided by Dan Gluck. So welcome aboard, Robert, and take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner
Grab the bull
Fong.
by the horns.
Thank you. I am humbled by your trust and confidence in me. And let me just briefly say thank you. I recognize the importance of, as mentioned, I think in prior discussions, the importance based on our Constitution of holding us to the highest standards of ethical conduct. Also, more broadly, just looking at the unrest on the national stage, the importance of ensuring confidence in democracy and confidence in the functioning of our state government. The other element, which I think is really critical to stress, is that when you have commissioners that are excited to have 2 terms, and even some commissioners looking to come back potentially after having served 2 terms, when you have staff that have served for decades, you know that there is a commitment to both the cause and a feeling of ohana, and I really respect and appreciate that. So plainly, the Ethics Commission has a strong foundation, and just maybe speaking broadly, I think during the first few months, my intent is to try to speak to as many people as possible, and this is an open call to anybody who watches this video. And I've met with Ms. Ma and look forward to meeting with others to try to look for ways to build upon that strong foundation that already exists in a successful way. So speaking generally, there are going to be some back-end issues that will have to be addressed that may not be the, forgive my poor language, perhaps most sexy of topics, but for example, the lease will expire in about a year or so in our current location. We have submitted requests to the legislature to update servers. So there are just some back-end issues that have to be handled well to ensure that this foundation continues, that we'll be looking at, and navigating sort of the return to work, assuming there's a post-pandemic world of remote working, remote meetings, in-person meetings, et cetera, and just trying to navigate that the most successful way. So all issues on the table, and then certainly look forward to any other input the commission has to give, things to be looking at. So with that, I do want to state that you do have the education training report statistics, the guidance and assignment statistics, as well as the financial report and the issuance of the high road. I don't, in the past 2 weeks, have something significant to add to those, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions if people have it, if they've had a chance to look at those reports.
I would like to say that I like the most recent high road. I think it's very good, nice graphics, well done to all the staff who puts that together. And good to reiterate some of the newer issues in there.
I do want to, I agree, and it is wonderful to see those things just come together seemingly by magic as I arise, but I reckon it's not people put hard work in putting that in. I do want to raise just a couple of things just on sort of miscellaneous. We have extended, and she has accepted an offer to fill the vacancy for the staff attorney position that's currently open. I don't know if we're allowed to release her name publicly yet. I don't know at what stage she is in and sort of getting away from her prior position. So I'll just simply say that she has an exceptional resume, exceptional references. We think she's going to be a great fit for the team and look forward to introducing you to her, and she'll start on February 10th. But pretty ecstatic to have somebody. In addition, I do want to turn it over to Benita to briefly mention some of the training updates that have happened. Benita, do you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you. Just want to mention we also have live on our website the updated travel questionnaire form for state employees to request guidance for when they receive payments from third parties to travel for state purposes and whether or not there's any gift issues there. So we have now an online form, so it's live, and we've already received, I think, three submissions via that mechanism. So that's great. Yay. And then also just as additional update on the miscellaneous, we're currently in the legislative financial disclosure season. So at the end of this month, we'll be receiving disclosures from legislators. And then for state employees and state board members, that's May cycle. So right now we're in the initial filing season for legislators specifically. Legislative staff, regular state employees and board members are due in end of May. And then this year, because it's an election year, we have disclosures for candidates. So it'll be a busy year. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonita. Are there any questions? I would like to talk briefly in the next meeting agenda item just on the legislative schedule, but are there any questions through what was presented?
Yeah.
Hey, Sandy.
I'm still excited that everything is being able to be done online now. So I'm just thrilled when we get these kind of updates about how easy it is for people to do things.
Robert, are you finished with your report? All 4 items, or are you going to go down to each one of items?
My intent wasn't to go through each item. It simply say you have the attachments before you, and I don't have anything to bring up a particular note. But if you have questions, obviously happy to address them. And I note that Ms. Ma has a question.
Well, if that being the case, then I'd like to bring up the issue about a mandatory ethics training that was proposed in the at least High Road, I guess. I'm all in favor of that. I think all of our state employees and board members should get ethics training. I know when we're elected to the neighborhood board, it's mandatory that we go through an ethics training or you get kicked off. There are some other organizations I know that are government organizations. It's mandatory that even the real estate board mandates that you take ethics training, or you just you can't practice real estate. So I think that's a great idea. And that way, when it's not sort of like trying to convince them to take ethics. I mean, how many people say, well, I need ethics training? But to make it mandatory, then we don't have to keep them getting these, hopefully, advisory requests.
Mm-hmm.
They should know, as they say, because a lot of them say, well, if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. Well, we told you during this ethics training. That's my
thank you.
sense on that.
Well,
Yeah,
I would
you,
certainly concur with Wesley on that. It's so fundamental. Sometimes I think we kind of overlook it. But basic ethics training for employees, officials and employees, it's sort of a baseline thing. And so I would heartily agree with Wesley's recommendation about that. I hope it goes forward soon.
So we do have 2 bills that have been introduced already. Today is the start of the legislative session. First bill is HB 1475. The second bill is SB 2039. So we have draft legislation that's in place. I've had conversations with so far chairs on both sides of the judiciary committees, got tentative support for at least hearing the matter, and talk to HGEA to sort of get their input on it. I think the issues are going to come up are probably more on the administrative side of how to track employees, how to make sure everybody has access to a computer. Is it during work time? How do we, as the Ethics Commission, track everybody taking it? So it's just going to be some issues that we're going to have to work through. I think the spirit of which I've tried to communicate it is our preference is to have more people taking the educational course and maybe a little less to be focused on the enforcement of it, particularly in the beginning as we get it going and trying to get everybody taking the ethics program, training programs. So we'll keep you posted, obviously, as it moves, and we'll, have a chance to talk about it during the next agenda item when we talk about the legislative session.
Right. You know, I really don't know who does the training. I assume our staff is doing the training for the various agencies that come up for ethics training. Is that correct?
So two-part answer, yes, absolutely. And our staff does a tremendous job. And I'd encourage you, if you're interested, we can definitely send around links to some of the upcoming trainings if you just want to see what it looks like, because it is quite impressive. But in
Right.
addition, one of the things that's really well done is last year, some of the training was put online as well. So the idea is part of a mandatory education requirement is you can just take it online, and you don't necessarily, you can take it sort of as your schedule accommodates. And I think that was an important step that we had to do first before pushing this bill.
Right. You know, I actually would enjoy sitting in online on one of those trainings just to see what it's like. So the next time we have a major ethics training, let me know if I could audit the course.
I think
You're wel-
the next session is the 25th, actually. Key
Wow.
and I will be
Oh, okay, great.
facilitating that. So I can have Caroline send you the link.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
I
There
believe,
will be a test at the end, however.
yeah.
When that's why I said audit the course. So
I believe Sandy had her hand up.
Sandy, would you like to be recognized?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. We do have a question. Common Cause Hawaii has a question regarding whether any guidance is provided by the Ethics Commission to people running for office, given that 2020 is a major election year, the separation, or just any guidance about ethical lines that shouldn't be crossed with lobbyists and campaigns or candidates running for office, because we've been hearing through the Coconut Wireless about, you know, sitting legislators and lobbyists actually advising on campaigns. And so we're just wondering if there's any guidance provided just in general that you just give out proactively to people.
Susan, would you mind fielding that question?
Yes, of course. We do have a campaign ethics flyer that we distribute. And I think this being an election year, we will likely distribute that to all state officials. Our jurisdiction over candidates is a little bit more limited in that it basically consists of requiring them to file their financial disclosure statements. And then those who don't file in a timely manner may be subject to fines. But aside from that, until a candidate becomes an elected state official, we don't really regulate their campaign activities. Now, having said that, you know, there is often an interplay between a candidate's campaign activities and state agencies. And so our way of addressing that in the past has been to send our campaign guidelines to all the sitting state legislators and other elected officials. And I think we've even distributed it to all state departments as a general reminder about, you know, what they can and cannot do in terms of campaign activities.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because we've been hearing a lot about, you know, active lobbyists having to represent clients before, you know, chairs of, you know, committees, and then being on their campaigns, like actively involved in on the inside of their campaigns. So yeah, thank you.
If you have any, you know, if the Coconut Wireless or something comes up to the point where you have something that we should be looking into, obviously we do take anonymous reports and would be interested in trying to follow up on things.
Thank you. I will. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Unless anybody has any other questions, I think that would conclude the executive director's report.
Okay, and now you were going to, okay, let me, were you going to do an update also on,
The next,
Yes, your next item there.
Yeah.
With the legislature, I believe. Yeah, no, go ahead.
yes, so sorry, the next item is to potentially propose having a meeting early in February in order to discuss bills that have been introduced. Ideally, we would have a list of some of the bills that may sort of impact the Ethics Commission, the Ethics Code, and sort of tentative positions. But the idea is to give all of you an opportunity to weigh in, so we sort of make sure that we're connected. Oh, I apologize. I've jumped ahead. We do have. I apologize. Item 4 is budget. I apologize. Let me back off and turn it back to the chair to say item 4 is budget, and then afterwards item 5 is the legislative session.
I don't think there's anything to say about the budget at this point, is there? Sorry, I'm looking along here. Sorry. No, I have no comments on the budget at this time. So go ahead.
Thank you.
There is nothing to say.
If anybody has any questions about the budget, obviously we're happy to circle back. So briefly, the proposal would be, and I'm going to talk a little bit more, but would be trying to have an early meeting in early February. So I'm giving people an opportunity to take a look at their calendars. The secondary thing is, in talking to legislators, I am still getting a lot of questions about administrative rule changes to gifts. And so one of the things that we've started doing is preparing the beginnings of a quick guide specific to legislators with the goal of potentially having that for you to take a look in early February, if the idea is something we can release during this session. Some of the questions that I'm hearing are pretty rudimentary. And so I think the idea of the quick guide is sort of just nip some of the things in the bud. So for example, a common question is, if some constituent stops by and wants to give me banana bread, I can't take that. So the idea is to try to take those sort of easier examples and just put it out in pretty clear language. And I think also potentially, if anybody tries to do something to change the gift law, we have something clear in black and white that we can show to say that we are really trying to work with people. So, I share that mostly from if you have any questions or thoughts that should be included in that draft before it comes up to you, or, anybody in the public has input, I think we're, still in the drafting stages and would, obviously welcome any input people would provide. So those would be the two topics potentially for a meeting in early February would be is reviewing that quick guide and sort of review position on legislative bills.
So, okay, there are a few comments on here. Let's see, we've got the session calendar. And so you were hoping also to have a meeting earlier in February with us to talk about bills that are being introduced or may be introduced. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the challenge would be is waiting to mid-February, is many of the bills will already be scheduled for hearing or already heard. And so I want to give the commission the opportunity to give guidance on the bills. My presumption is 90% of the time we're going to be in complete alignment, but on some of those areas where maybe there might be slightly different points of view, I want to make sure the commission's had an opportunity to take a look at the bill and give input. So the intent of the meeting the first week of February would be to try to do that specifically.
Robert, may I request that if there are any bills that you think will affect the commission, that you can email them to us, at least so we have a heads up on it before we discuss it. I hate to be inundated by all these different bills and I have to go through it in one meeting. That way I can be prepared to discuss it. Can you do that? And my question is, are there any now that you know of that may affect the commission?
So
it's a rhetorical question. I don't know if you know or not.
Yeah, so answering your last question first, I mean, today's the first day of session, so bills are being introduced, and over the next 10 days, I believe, bills will be introduced, you know, fast and furiously. So we won't really be able to answer the gamut of that until, you know, essentially the bill introduction deadline is a cutoff. You know, the hope is, again, to sort of be able to say, here's, you know, the 15, 20 or number of bills. I've had one group approach me that has already said that they're going to be trying to introduce a bill to eliminate the income disclosure requirements, the financial disclosure requirements for certain boards and commissions. They want to redact essentially how much income they receive, so they'd still be reporting income. And so we had a long discussion, and I'm not sure they fully understood what the law currently requires and what is currently disclosed, but I anticipate that bill is going to be there, and we're going to have to talk about it. And I think iterations of that bill have been introduced in the past before, so it's not anything new. But you know, essentially that's all I know of as of current. I think subject to sunshine laws, you know, about what we can share or not share, you know, we certainly would try to give you as much early heads notice as possible. But obviously, we're all going to be working on a tight timetable. You know, the idea is to try to have the meeting as soon as possible after the cutoff, giving us a little bit of time to kind of review the bills and sort of, you know, do quick summaries, et cetera, and then try to get your input as quickly as possible. Just it's a, you know, legislative timetable we're trying to work around.
I think that that's a good idea for a number of reasons. We have two relatively newish commissioners who maybe have not been through the full legislative cycle here. And you are new to this body as well, Robert. So I think that if we had a meeting just to see what's coming up and what kind of questions maybe you have been fielding, so that we can support your efforts to educate people and back you up on some of the issues. I don't know how long a meeting would have to be, but I think it probably would be good to have a meeting early in February. And I know that some of the things will die because, you know, they've got to get referred around again. And, but I still think it would be good for us to meet. What do the other commissioners think? This would be in addition to our regular meeting, which would be on the 16th of February.
Well, as long as we don't hold it on, you know, like a Wednesday, because an early Wednesday, because I have another commitment. But I'd be willing to do, as Wes said, look it over, see what I really think about some of the interaction. And then when we come to an early meeting, just look at what we need to do to get these things or support these things going through.
Robert, why don't you pick a date, or a tentative date in February that we can meet to discuss any type of legislation that may affect the ethics commission.
Okay, hold on.
Susan, do you have any input there? I can also defer to you.
I do not. How about February 3rd, which is a Thursday, or the 4th is Friday?
Third? Yeah, what time?
3rd looks good.
What time?
9 o'clock?
Sure.
Okay.
Anybody have any objections?
No objections. The 3rd's fine with me. And as per Wes's suggestion, maybe the Friday before, if you could send to us the pertinent legislative bills that we need to look at, and so we'll have that time.
I appreciate that. We'll try to be as efficient as possible. You know, I pledge to that in the meeting. I think the intent would be is to give a quick summary of what the staff's recommendation would be on the bills, you know, in the form of 1 or 2 sentences. Again, not much longer than that, with the idea that if you see red flags, like, well, wait a second, you know, we can have an opportunity to talk about that in particular. But I don't know if we necessarily need to spend time on each and every bill, you know, in depth. The idea is more of just trying to see where maybe misalignment or some areas of gray that we need to discuss more.
Yeah, Robert, the reason why I say I like to see the legislation before their meeting is so that I can digest it. And if I really have no comment on it, then we can just move on. We don't have to go through each one of the I mean, you know, some of these legislators, they love to have burned paper. I don't know. I mean, you know, I know one that my daughter voted, you know, worked for 126 bills in a year. I mean, that's ridiculous. But anyway, so what, and also I need some guidance for me. I don't know about the rest of the commissioners. What you think that we should look at that may affect the commission, that we should take a stance, you know, yay, nay, or whatever.
Yeah.
I need some guidance that I'll speak for myself.
I would concur in that as well. Sure.
Yes.
I'm sure there's
definitely.
maybe only a handful of bills that are there that are going to be really pertinent to our business, and Robert could kind of sort of identify those in advance, and we can shorten up the meeting by doing that, I think.
Well, and I think we have a great resource in Ray, who's being very quiet right now, having been a legislator himself as well as a judge. He kind of knows this process, and
I think
so
it's good to have the lay of the land at the beginning, knowing that these bills are going to make a couple of iterations before they get to the final version. But I think towards the end is when we're going to really need to meet again. But in the beginning, it just gives us kind of like the lay of the land, and half of them are going to die. So there's no sense, in my mind, going line by line, because we don't know what's going to happen. But as we get closer to the end, we will know which ones are of critical importance and we can meet again. So the first meeting would be a short one, maybe.
I think that's the full intent. And I think it's really just trying to make sure that we're aligned. So I fully agree. Most of the bills are going to die. We don't need to spend a ton of time on it. I think the main thing is that there are, you know, there's sort of there's the administration of the bill. So for example, something that directs us to do something where we can pretty fairly answer and easily answer, you know, we can do it, we can't do it, we need more resources, et cetera. And those are pretty clear and easy for the staff to handle. There are some that are policy calls. You know, do we think, you know, more transparency or less transparency? And I just want to make sure that there's no misalignment between the staff and the commission when we submit testimony on that type of sort of a policy call. And so I think the intent is to say, here's where we would lean and respond. If this comes up for hearing, here's where we'd lean, and just trying to make sure there's no misalignment. So my hope is, you know, to give you that you know, database of list of bills and sort of tentative positions, with the idea that, you know, we can catch any misalignments, but we don't necessarily have to spend a ton of time talking about it. The bills start really gaining traction and start changing, then, you know, as Commissioner Galti points out, you know, we'll probably talk about it more at a future meeting.
One question I have, technical, actually, would this meeting on the 3rd at 9 o'clock, would it be subject to the sunshine law? Do we have to let the public in, like whoever?
I believe so, yes. I mean, it would be the commission's public position on policy matters. So yes, I would think this would be a sunshine law.
So Sandy, you're invited.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you want to come.
I've always thought of Sandy as the 6th commissioner.
We're not advocating for any bills this session. In full disclosure, we haven't asked any legislators to introduce any bills this session. In previous sessions we have, but not this session. So.
Okay.
okay.
And do we have to vote on having this meeting on the 3rd as a matter of protocol, I guess? Since we are a quote unquote, you know, government, I mean, a public body, I don't know what you call it, it's a government body. I don't know, I'll ask that of Susan and Robert.
I don't believe that it's a vote is necessary. Of course you can if you want to take a vote, but for purposes of the sunshine law, we would be posting a notice 6 days in advance of the meeting. So we'll satisfy that requirement.
I don't want anybody complaining that we're hiding the ball, as they say.
Oh, no.
Us?
No.
No, what else? We're
So-
transparent.
It seems like just in hearing the discussion, people are willing to have a meeting on that Thursday to just have a review of proposed legislation that's pertinent to us. Is there any objection to that?
And I think the one other thing that we might try to put on the agenda would be a review of a guidance, essentially a sort of a quick review of the gifts law for lobbyists, legislators.
Good idea. It's always good to review that and do our best to educate the legislators who are very slow learners sometimes. So hearing no further comments, shall we move on to agenda item 6, which is Akana versus the Hawaii State Ethics Commission and Daniel Gluck, Akana versus the Hawaii State Ethics Commission and the State of Hawaii Ethics Commission versus Rowena Akana. Are there any updates on our Rowena Akana cases?
And
go ahead. We can have an executive session if needed.
So sorry, I see that we've had another person in the public come into the waiting rooms, letting them in.
Hello.
Aloha, Cody. Welcome. So we're on item number 6, the Akana versus Hawaii State Ethics Commission topic. So I've had the opportunity to speak to the Attorney General's office and sort of get up to date on some of the collection efforts and sort of where that is. I think if we're going to have a discussion of it, we probably should go into executive session just because it would be attorney-client discussions. I guess I'd sort of defer to the commissioners if they want to do that now or if they want to do it the next meeting.
Robert, do you think it's important for us to discuss it now? Because if it is, I'd like to hear it. I mean, this case has been going on for the last, geez, when did I get on this commission?
4 years ago?
I think I started with this case.
Yeah, we were young then, Wes.
So if you think it's important, I'll just move that we move into executive session and you can tell us what's going on.
I mean, well, do we have some indication that there is something going on that perhaps we should discuss? I mean,
what do you think?
To be clear, I don't think there's anything new that has happened. I think it's more of getting clarity in my mind of what legal choices we want to make. And there's some effort we can make right now. I just want to make sure that I'm following what the commission's intent is. And I think if we're going to discuss the attorney-client, pros and cons of those risks, then it should be done in executive session.
Well, my understanding,
Robert,
Robert,
I don't think there's anything burning or
okay. My understanding, Robert, is, and for every meeting that's since today, it's still an appeal. And it hasn't been settled yet. But the appeal hasn't been heard. Is that correct?
Correct. And I think any discussion would be more with regards to collection efforts, which, I think it's a decision that, we should discuss in executive session if there's a decision to try to change the current status quo.
So did you make a motion, Wes, that we should go into executive session?
I only if Robert thinks it's necessary, because I don't want to waste the commission's time. I mean, if there's something, no, we're talking about collection.
This is never
collection. Should we hold on to a judiciary meeting? I mean, rather than do it now? That's a different issue, because the status of the case of Akana versus Hawaii State Ethics is still on appeal. But the issue about collecting what she owes, isn't that a different issue? Okay, we can bring up in a judiciary meeting?
No, it's on this agenda. It's not on the other agenda, so we can't bring it up.
All right.
Well, isn't the potential collection of funds that we believe are due from her, isn't that part and parcel of some of the issues that are being held on appeal? And if it is, I mean, we had no choice but to wait for the decision of the Court of Appeals.
So why don't we to answer your question, Commissioner Fong, why don't we go into brief executive session? I think it'd just be important to get clarity on this issue.
Okay, Madam Chair, let's just, it's already 1 hour already. I move that we move into executive session.
I'll second.
Excuse me, can we incorporate into the motion that the commission will be going into an executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-5A4 to consult with the commission's attorneys?
I'll also incorporate that in my motion, whatever Susan said.
Yeah, and I'll second it again.
Okay, let us do the vote. Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Commissioner Gralty,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobias,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So we'll go into executive session. Okay, so we are back in the public meeting. Sir,
Move to adjourn?
okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so we'll do the roll call vote. Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Commissioner Gralty,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobias,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So the meeting is adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back for our adjudicatory meeting.